Hi, I'm Tim Stillman, the presenter of the Arsenal Women Arsecast on Arseblog.com, and we're really excited about our 100th episode. And we've been thinking of a little while, this has been coming up, this kind of milestone, and we thought, what can we really do? And obviously we wanted to get a really special guest, which we've managed to do, and we thought, who better to get than the guest on episode 1 of the Arsenal Women Arsecast, one Leah Williamson, and we're really grateful to Leah for her time. And we did about a 25-minute interview with Leah, which you can listen to on the podcast on audio, but we've also done a video, as you're watching right now, so that you can watch it as well. And that's also a big thank you to you, to our listeners, our readers, our audience. We're really, really grateful that we've been able to get to episode 100 because we have the audience to justify it, and that's thanks to you. So consider this an early Christmas present, if indeed you celebrate Christmas. To you, that's Arseblog interviewing Leah Williamson. So Leah, 100th episode of the Arsenal Women Arsecast.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. You are our guest on episode number 1, as well as 13 and 37. So episode 1, episode 100, biggest achievement of your career, top 3 maybe?
I'd actually put it up there, Tim. Yeah, I would. I was thinking then, have I actually done anything I was talking about? But yeah, no, I love this podcast. You know I do. You've left me alone for a while.
Well, yeah, so. Well, that's actually one of the things I want to talk about, because obviously, for really good positive reasons, it's harder to get player time in my position now. And what I'd really like to do is kind of reflect on, it was February 2019, episode number 1, right? So it was the build up to the Conti Cup final. That year, and just reflect on kind of the journey of Arsenal women's football in that time. And actually, I want to talk straight away about that period in 2019 and actually that Conti Cup final. I don't think I've ever told you this, but the press officer came up before the penalty shootout in that Conti Cup final and asked me who I wanted to speak to. And I said you, because I thought you'd been the best player on the pitch, and then you missed the penalty. Yeah. And I'm sure when the press officer came in, you must have been like, why do they want me? But I guess the end of that season, Arsenal winning the title and, going to the 2019 World Cup. As you reflect now, what did you learn from that period? Maybe as well, in that title run, in managing the emotion of those big games.
Yeah, I remember that Conti Cup final, and I don't think we had more than 20% possession. Well, that's what it felt like. So did we really deserve to win the game? Probably not. I'd taken 20 penalties against KB at an England camp the previous week. So it was a really big learning curve for me as a young player. I went up, changed my spot, even just that experience, and looking ahead to wanting to be going to a World Cup and all of the things on the horizon for me on the bigger picture. It was a good learning day. But then that run-in for the league, securing Champions League at Birmingham away, that was I think it was a late goal. I want to say late 80s, but I don't actually know. I
think it's late 70s.
70s.
It felt like that.
Yeah. But to be that composed and have to deal with the stress of the game in that way, that was probably more of a turning point for me, I'd say, than the rest of the games. But it just really felt like a shift. We had a really good thing going with Joe. I look back on those times and I think they're some of the best performances of my career, despite my age and everything else. So I think it was a great period of time for me. I think I developed most as a footballer into sort of being like an adult in that time, because Joe required it of me, and he just pushed me and he gave me more strings to my bow, which then I think subsequently led to my selection for the World Cup, which was one of the most invaluable experiences ever.
Yeah, and so Arsenal are on a good path at that moment in time. There's kind of an uptick in attendances after 2019, and we start seeing those games in big stadiums and things like that. And then COVID hits and it all changes, and probably things change for Joe and for Arsenal in terms of where Arsenal were in their journey, as it were. I mean, how, again, as you reflect, how weird has it been really to go from having, first of all, 6 months without football at all, where the WSL was cancelled, then all of that behind closed doors, and then almost so quickly going from that to these big attendances, the kind of post-Euros boom and everything. Do you ever reflect on that COVID period now and just how crazy it's kind of been the last few years?
100%. We were talking about it, went to Spurs, obviously Spurs away, whenever that was, a couple of weeks ago. and I said, do you remember the crowd? And that was just before COVID, I think. We had 48,000 and it felt like a really big moment. And then it's like somebody just swiped her legs out from under us with COVID. And it seems so far away now. But I think for the game, how did it affect the game? I don't know. Would we be further along, or did it give us the opportunity to really show people what they're missing when they come back? I don't know. But that was the weirdest time to be a footballer. I remember at the time being really angry. Like, this is my 10 years career, let's just say, on average. And typical, like, I've already been injured so much. Now there's a pandemic, it feels like we just can't get going. And it did sort of, I think, kill the momentum that we were building at Arsenal as well, on the pitch especially.
And what about in terms of your prep? Did your prep change in that behind closed doors period, and has it changed subsequently with the kind of, just literally playing in front of bigger crowds? Yeah,
I think the missing out on games, when we went back to playing games, I really struggled with performance anxiety. I don't know if it's because, I do sort of know because I've unpacked it, but I spoke to a psychologist. I started that journey, which I'd never done before, like regularly, to turn that around. And it's because I cared so much. So it'd be those games, the London derbies, and typically the ones I was most nervous for, I'd probably end up playing the better games, but that's not sustainable. And that changed my prep completely for every game, which then I've spoken about paid into when we got to the Euros. I wasn't nervous. I was nervous, but nothing was overwhelming. It was all manageable because of the things I put in place. And then now it's sort of not getting carried away with it. So I'd done all that prep and I found something that worked, which I've kept, but it might need tweaking. And most of the time now with the bigger crowds and the games at the Emirates, that really feels like home. So it's not that crazy of an experience for us. However, it's more about shutting out the noise rather than before, like we were, you'd be really engaged on social media and you're trying to push ticket sales and all those things. And now it's kind of like those things you have to take a step back from. So I suppose that's how it's changed my prep in a way. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I found something really basic that worked for me and I tick those boxes before every game and rely on that for the consistency of performance.
And in terms of, I want to pick up on like one moment. It is an injury, but it's not the injury.
Yeah.
At Spurs away in 21-22, where you tore your hamstring up pretty badly.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, played on it for quite a while. And I wonder if that was a learning experience as well, in terms of, because I imagine adrenaline takes over and everything. And I guess maybe taking a step back from that kind of thing as part of your, performing, as it were.
Yeah, 100%. I felt it in the warm-up, continued to play, and then literally felt it tear nearly off the bone and like the 20th minute. So to play on was stupid from an athlete's perspective. If it's a World Cup final, that's a different conversation. Champions League final, then you're putting your body through anything. But it was short-sighted. It was Spurs. It was very emotionally led. Like I didn't want to leave the pitch. All of those things. So yeah, definitely a big learning curve for me. And it was also my first injury that I'd had for a long time. I think I'd done a good few years without one. Bearing in mind when I came through as a youth, I was hurt quite a lot. So that threw me off a little bit, but also from my body perspective. So I chased some real sort of gains, I suppose you could say. I went to an Olympics. I was the fittest like I'd ever been, really. But my body fat percentage, all of these things like dramatically dropped. And on paper, you'd think, wow, she's a machine. Within 2 months, my hamstring had snapped. So also learning about myself and what's sustainable, what's not. And everybody thinks going in the gym is always going to be a good idea, but to what level can my body cope with it? So good learnings, and provided me with time to sort of reset as well, which is probably good in hindsight.
And, obviously the Euros happens and everything, and post-Euros we have this, like I've seen so many times over the years, like post-tournament, you get like sometimes quite a big pickup.
Yeah.
But like the size and scale of this, in terms of why do you think Arsenal in particular have been well placed to really, really capitalise on that and the explosion in interest and attendances?
I think firstly because of the genuine commitment to the growth of the game. Vinay, who was here before, obviously has left. and he won't mind me sharing this, but he was always really open with the other clubs as well. Like, there's no point in Arsenal living in this zone alone. Like, we all need to go together for the growth of the game. And he always shared his expertise, what the club had done that had worked, hadn't worked. It was like a really open forum in that way. So I think they knew what was coming. Just as the FA, the FA obviously planned for those things. Like, we know we have a home tournament, so we're going to inject this at this point, etc., etc. The Olympics is a great example of what we did as well. And I think Arsenal just have always, and I don't think it's necessary, and this is my opinion, but like, from being at the club, and it's not like a competitive thing, but it's we're proud to have been the team that were always here, and we were born out of the community and all of those things, and we've not had the most perfect journey, but we have always been this sort of the centre of English football for women in this country, in recent years. So I think it's something they take pride in, and something they want to continue to lead the way with, and also willing to take a gamble on. Like, the way they look at it is, this is a business and worth an investment, which I would agree with. I'm slightly biased, obviously, but I do think that, everyone knows that one day it will bring in a larger revenue than today, and Arsenal are willing to be the first to see what they can and can't achieve. So yeah, I think they used the timing well, but also I think Arsenal as a name in women's football has carried for so long that as soon as people watched it on the telly, they knew that there would be a lot of people that then turned to us to look for those opportunities to come and watch.
Yeah, there's a couple of comments I'd love to draw on there. First of all, when Arsenal did that thing after the Euros and after Hafa won the Copa America as well, and I was here that day, and Vinay came and spoke to me and a few others, and he was like, yeah, we want the Emirates to be, the permanent home of the women's team. And I was taken aback a bit. I was like, at the time, felt like, maybe in 10, 15 years kind of thing. And actually, you're saying that to me quite openly. And like the ambition of it at that time and how quickly that's just like, yeah, of course, that's just the thing that's happened. But also there was something Lotta said, and I want to know if you relate to it, when that first sellout against Wolfsburg, she was the player in the press conference, and someone asked her about, growing up as an Arsenal fan and everything. Did you ever imagine that you'd play in front of a sold out Emirates, or did you think it could happen? And I really like the way she phrased the answer. She kind of said, it wasn't that I didn't think it could happen. It was that I never thought about it. I never considered it as a possibility. And I wonder whether you relate to that as well, because covering the game, I never thought I'd see that.
Oh, 100%. When I had the same reaction when Vinay's telling us that, he's like, we're going to do this. And I'm thinking, really? Like, that wouldn't have been on my mind to, people ask me about equal pay and things like that. I'm like, it's not something that I think about. So you ask me, do I agree or don't agree? I don't have an opinion because it seems so far off for me. But I agree, yeah. I mean, I came to the Emirates to watch Arsenal. I was mascot with 5,000 in the crowd, which felt like the biggest day of the year for me. I'd also seen FA Cup finals be, 25,000, but then 5,000 attendance, and really fluctuate year on year. So I never knew what to expect. But that sellout I'd say that was one of the most amazing feelings I've ever had. Also the most heartbreaking, because I was on the bench, in the stands. But that felt that day like we've actually achieved something. And I hope that one day we're not celebrating sellouts. I hope that one day that's just what happens. We don't talk about it, but that one deserved celebrating. And we still talk about it now.
Yeah, definitely. And, 2024, I think there's just this year, average attendance of 41,000 at the Emirates, which I think completely justifies its use. But thinking about that, like post 2022 kind of boom as well, in terms of what that's meant for you personally in your profile, I'll admit I had like a moment at Wembley, because I was there at that Euros final as a fan, and I looked up at the screen and you were like walking over to Prince William to take the trophy. And even I was like, I kind of know that person. This is weird. And like, actually, you're going to go quite quickly from being famous within women's football to being like a famous person, basically. And like, how has that been for you, that experience, in terms of what it's done for your profile and I guess your time as well, and like pressures on your time?
Yeah, so you've known me however many years, and I've never I've always been really happy with the way that I live my life. I'm very lucky to be surrounded by my family still. I live at home, basically. I haven't had to move to play football. Got my childhood friends still around. I'm still friends with them. So I use that. Like I exercise my freedoms with those people regularly, always have done. Doing very normal things with my very normal family as a very normal person. I struggled with that in a sense because I felt like some of my freedoms were being taken away, or I couldn't do things exactly as I wanted to do them. However, there's always a plus and, there's always a plus and a minus for things. But I think that it's not our responsibility, but the bigger the profile, obviously I've tried to use it at times to grow the game where I can. There's a thought process behind everything. Sometimes I'm going somewhere because I just want to have a good time, and sometimes I'm going somewhere because I think it's really useful for my future or for the game's future. So I've had to be a bit more, we all like to go through life not thinking and just doing what we want to do and how we feel on the day. I can't really do that anymore, which is difficult. And ultimately I'm still exactly the same person that I have always been. I know I am because my people tell me, kind of thing. But I suppose that was the hardest thing for me, is, like I say, my freedoms and feeling like they were taken away. But as a footballer, it's not really made a difference I never really listened to outside noise before, so it hasn't really changed for me in that way. But yeah, it's hard for me. It's hard to watch my family get bombarded and stuff like that at games. I think it's unfair. But such is the world, I suppose, that we live in.
Yeah, and you talked about like places you go, things you do. One of the things, going to New York to speak to the UN, about like visits to Jordan. We had you on the podcast once to talk about visit to Jakarta.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering in terms of your profile and perhaps like the reach of it to causes like that, but also like the more global aspect of it, but how you've been able to, use that profile and how kind of consciously you wanted to do things like that.
Well, that's the thing. I think I was battling with it, let's just call it fame. Like, what am I going to get out of this? Because there's a real risk here that all it does is take. And we're not compensated in the same way that male athletes are. That's across the board, women's athletes. That's fine. But then obviously we've gone shooting to the top of sort of household names. So I'm like battling with it at the start. What am I going to do with this? And I'm thinking about me, obviously. And then I thought, well, I don't really think there's any way that it doesn't relate to me. It relates to my role and my job. And then I started to think a bit bigger, and then opportunities like that come along, and I'm like, well, even if it was something that I didn't really want to do, but I felt like it was necessary, I would step outside of my comfort zone. So then I'm getting something out of that, but also I'm helping to spread a message, or it's a very uncomfortable thing to be told that your voice is listened to, and all of a sudden we became these people where everyone's looking at us for an answer. So I wanted to respect that whilst being super uncomfortable with it. But things like the UN that's exactly, if you ask me how I feel about it, well, I'm grateful because maybe, even if one more person knows the name or the cause that I'm speaking about, then I think it's probably worth it. So yeah, I've had some amazing, I'm not pretending that I haven't had benefits from those things, because they're amazing experiences for me, but ultimately sort of believing that there's a bit more of a higher purpose. And I've never just been a footballer. Again, I think I speak fairly. I love football and I do it because it's the most important thing of important things for me. But I have lots of other passions and lots of other things that I just want to make sure that I've done everything I can with the time that I've had eventually. So probably one day I'll walk away knowing that I gave it everything, Yeah,
absolutely. And I know we had a conversation in Washington about, because with Arsenal in particular, there's a lot of talk about the numbers, like the numbers of people who are coming to the stadium and the numbers of ticket sales. But one of the things I've observed up close is like the creation of a real fan culture and real community, and not just people going into the stadium and sitting there and watching, but participating. And we spoke about after the Conti Cup final this year, I had a great view of it in the press box and took a little video of like, you know, the players together on the pitch and the fans singing the Angel and everything like that. You know, again, did you ever think that you would experience something like that?
No, I thought the only time I'd experience those things is me being in the stand. You know, that's why I always liked going to watch the men, because I got both sides of football. I got to play it, but I got to be that fan that had those moments. And all of a sudden, we've got this fan base that I like the interaction that way with the fans. That's what it should be. That's what football fandom is, that people come to support you, you give everything that your body allows to repay that support, and then hopefully you get moments to celebrate together. Like that to me is the life cycle of fans and football. And anything extra is a bonus, but like ultimately that's what it comes down to. And those moments, I always say this, it's the same with the Euros final, it's the same with days like that. The only thing that would make it better is if I could do like half and half, like one in the stands as an Arsenal fan, England fan, and one on the pitch. Because I think it's special. And those are the moments, like when you look back, that's what life's about, moments like that, and being in big groups of people. And, you know, that's why I like music. That's why I like going to Glastonbury, because you stand and you just feel like you're part of something. So, yeah.
And just a final question, just a really general one about how you feel about where you are in your career at the moment, you know, 27, England captain, but also like probably coming into your peak years, particularly as a centre half, and how you feel, you know, with the kind of ACL injury going into the rear view a bit more. I know there have been issues around that as well associated with it, but just how you feel as a purely as Leah Williamson, the football player, the Arsenal centre half at the moment.
I'm excited. That's genuinely how I feel. I've sort of found a bit of a reignition of love for the game. Like you say, after my ACL, I came back, but I was never really back. I'd never completed a week of full training until the end of the year, really. So to be able to just start now and look ahead, I'm very excited, because people keep telling me that I'm about to go into my peak years, and that means that my ceiling's about to go up. I've tried to put myself in environments where people are pushing me to reach that. And I'm looking after my body to make sure that it can do the job that it needs to do. So I think I've had bad luck. I've had time off the pitch. Any time now that I get on it, I'm grateful. That's been a real change. But as a footballer, I've got a European Championship, a World Cup, an Olympic cycle to see through. There's nothing more exciting than that. And I play for two teams that are always competing. So for me, that's, again, very blessed, very lucky. And yeah, I'm enjoying it. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm happy. I'm enjoying spending time with my teammates, getting the most out of me to bring to the team and then for everybody else. And I think it's had this is sort of a new mentality, and I think it's had a direct impact on performances in the last couple of months. So yeah, whilst things are good, I'll stay in this zone, and I'm sure there'll be times I have to put my head down and work hard. But for now, I'm trusting that day by day, just being on the pitch and getting match minutes for the first time in a long time, and just being consistent. I'm hoping it'll bring out the best in me. Yeah.
Leah Williamson, thanks so much.
Thanks.
And I look forward to episode 200 when we'll have you back on.
I might be retired by then.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Wrap?
Yeah.
Awesome.